beneficent. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Today, our talk is about role of ultrasound in abdominal emergencies, and our speaker is the legend, the pioneer of ultrasound and radiology in Pakistan, Professor Dr. Muhammad Nawaz Anjum, who started ultrasound in Pakistan in 70s, and he is retired professor from Mayo Hospital, Lahore, which is the biggest government hospital. He is nowadays working as head of department in the radiology research section of University of Lahore. We welcome you, sir, and we are thankful to you for sparing time for our students, colleagues all over the world. So the mic is with you, sir. You can share your screen and start your presentation. Professor Dr. Muhammad Nawaz Anjum.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. So we are going to talk about emergency abdominal ultrasound. First of all, there are many people coming to the emergency ultrasound with right upper quadrant pain. This is the most common presentation in most of the countries. So this is the gallbladder. The patient has to come prepared without any fatty meal. Fried food, milk, ice cream, they have to avoid it for at least 12 hours. And then we scan with ultrasound longitudinal and transverse sections in between the ribs and in the right hypochondrium. Prevalence highest in the Pima Indians in North America. This is the highest prevalence. Intermediate is in Caucasians and Asian population, 20% to 25 to 20%. And in the Pima Indian, 50%. And lowest prevalence is in the Africans, plus minus 5%. So when you scan, you can see the gallbladder as you saw in the previous picture, and then you can see the debris. These may be floating crystals or debris or blood, and then you can see a stone also in there. Ultrasound is the most sensitive modality to see the gallstones. And in acute cholecystitis, the most important thing is to see the cholelithiasis. This is the primary sign. And secondary findings are sonographic Murphy sign, where you press with the probe gently in the right hypochondrium and patient feels the pain. And the second secondary sign is gallbladder wall thickening. It should be above 3 millimeters. Below 3 millimeters is normal, above that it is abnormal. And another secondary sign is pericholecystic fluid collection. This occurs due to perforation of the gallbladder and leakage of the bile in the periphery. And here you can see a gallbladder which is distended. It has a fluid level with the debris and the bile, and these are the gallstones. And there's the acoustic shadowing. This is the typical. Unless you see the acoustic shadowing, you cannot say it is a stone. It may be a sludge ball, but it cannot be a stone. And in acute cholecystitis, as you can see here, there's thickening of the wall, there's a stone, there's the debris, this is the bile. And in the CT scan, you can see thick-walled gallbladder and pericholecystic stranding of the fat. This is seen here. Here you can see thickening of the gallbladder wall, sludge is there, and the wall is very thick. It should be less than 3 millimeters. Then you will get many people and this is slightly difficult to diagnose, that the stone is impacted in the neck of the gallbladder. When this occurs, the gallbladder distends. Here you can see the stone also. This is called mucocele of the gallbladder. Now the length of the gallbladder can vary from 5 to 10 centimeters. So that should not be measured, only measure the transverse diameter of the gallbladder. It should be less than 5 centimeters. And here the stone impacted here. Once there is a cholecystitis, this is the stone in the fundus, and the fluid has leaked into the pericholecystic area outside the gallbladder. Sometime, in spite of all the effort, you cannot find a stone. So then there's a category which is called acalculous cholecystitis. And here you can see debris in there, thick wall, and on the Doppler you can see blood flow in the wall of the inflamed gallbladder. Emphysematous cholecystitis occurs in diabetic patients, immunocompromised patients, but ultrasound is not the modality of choice. Here, because of air, you'll get many artifacts. So you have to have CT scan to properly visualize it. And these are intrahepatic biliary stones. There are some syndromes where you'll get these intrahepatic biliary stones. And here, after the operation, this patient has abdominal pain, hypochondrium and epigastric pain. And here is a sludge ball. CBD after operation or before operation should not be more than 8 millimeters. On X-ray, we take it 12 millimeters. But on ultrasonography and CT, it is 8 millimeters. And this is a sludge ball with slight shadowing there. And this is the appearance of the air in the biliary tree, pneumobilia. This could be due to penetrating trauma, intervention, gallstone ileus, or sphincterotomy of the ampoule of water. And that's how it looks on the CT scan. There's ascites, liver is there, and these dark areas. This is air in the biliary tree. And these are the portal radicals. Liver abscess in developing countries, most common is amoebic liver abscess. Or it could be a echinococcal, or it could be due to helminths, due to roundworms. But in our country, amoebic is very common. And that's how it looks like. And the most common presentation which I've seen over the years is shivering and pain. And then you get this hypoechoic area, and with time it liquefies and becomes dark, completely cystic. Here it is mixed. And that's how it happens. It becomes dark, cystic, and it takes up to 2 years to completely resolve. So when you're looking at it, the patient may be asymptomatic, but the abscess will stay because it will gradually absorb from the periphery, and it will take about 2 years to completely disappear. Complications of this abscess are pleural effusion if it ruptures into the pleural cavity, perihepatic fluid collection, gastric or colonic involvement, and retroperitoneal extension. These are the complications, and when you are examining the liver abscess, you should focus on these areas to see if there's any extrahepatic complication or involvement. Here you can see the liver abscess. This is the diaphragm. So anything anterior to the diaphragm is going to be intra-abdominal or subphrenic. And anything posterior to the diaphragm is going to be pleural in origin. So here you are looking at you can see this star, and you can see it here. This is a hepatic abscess which has ruptured into the pleural cavity. Now there are people who will be coming with pain epigastrium. Now there are three possibilities. One is gastric ulcer, other is pancreatitis, and third is cholecystitis and cholelithiasis. This is the anatomy of the pancreas, and the most important structure to remember is this splenic vein, which runs along the superior and posterior margin of the pancreas. And this is a pancreatic duct. It goes here and joins the CBD and opens into the second part of the duodenum. And that's how the pancreas looks like on ultrasound: head, neck, body, and the tail. And this is the splenic vein here. So the measurements are important. Head is 2.5 centimeters, neck is 2 centimeters, body is 2 centimeters, and tail is 1.5 centimeters. So it's important to remember these things because there could be focal pancreatitis or generalized, and these measurements will guide you if there's any pancreatitis. Here you can see the whole of the pancreas is swollen, splenic vein is here. This is the most important landmark, and here will be the superior mesenteric artery in this area. This is the portal venous system: spleen, splenic vein, portal vein. So when there is a pancreatic pathology, it can involve the vein and it can get thrombosed, or it can erode the vein or the artery and cause pseudoaneurysms. These two complications are important, and some people say that if you see a cystic area, put a needle inside and see if it is what type of fluid it is. But I recommend that anytime you see a fluid in the pancreatic area, turn the color Doppler on and see if it is vascular or not, because you may rupture an aneurysm and the patient may die. Here you can see plane, and here you can see the Doppler, and the splenic vein is thrombosed. This is a portal vein, this is a splenic vein which is thrombosed. And here you can see the portal vein is thrombosed. Here's the CT, this is a ultrasound. So thrombosis of the portal vein and the splenic vein and formation of pseudoaneurysm is very important. Then recently there was a doctor, he came in, and everybody was saying that some say that there's a gastritis, something like this. But when I looked at it, I saw there were stones in the pancreatic duct. So the pancreatic duct can have stone. In chronic pancreatitis, you'll have stones, and they can be very difficult to treat. He had ERCP and had it removed, and finally he had to add anastomosis of the pancreas with the duodenum. And that's how it looks on the CT scan. And the pancreatic duct maximum diameter is 2 millimeters. If it is more than that, it is abnormal. Then pain in the left upper quadrant. There could be an abscess in the subphrenic area, but most important is, although it is very rare, is abscess in the spleen. It will present the same way: shivering, pain, but instead of pain on the right side, have pain on the left side in the splenic area. Then pain in the right iliac fossa. This is also very common presentation. And the appendix will be inflamed. It will look like a tubular structure with thick wall, and sometime on ultrasound and Doppler you will see vascularity, and it should be less than 6 millimeters. If it is more than 6 millimeter, that indicates there's inflammation. Or you can see the appendix which is inflamed, and you can see the appendiculitis also. These are one of the causes of appendicitis. And appendix can rupture, and it can be very confusing and also very dangerous for the patient, because the patient can have peritonitis and can die from this complication. Then another complication or presentation is renal colic. This is very common in our country. Pakistan has a lot of people with stones. Maybe there's a deficiency of protein, or there's dehydration. People don't drink enough water. So patient will present with left or right flank pain. And here you can see the kidney, you can see a stone in the renal pelvis, fullness of the calyces, and there's acoustic shadowing here. Or the stone can go here, and this is the PUJ obstruction. And you can see hydronephrosis, fullness of the calyces, and here's the stone. Or the stone can go down when the pain is radiating to the inner thigh or the testes, and the stone can be impacted in the lower end of the ureter. Here you can see the jet of urine coming in is partially blocking the ureter. Then another presentation is hematuria, because it is not may not be painful, but it causes panic in they rush to the hospital. This is the boy who was playing at the school. He fell down and he came for the ultrasound, and we saw this upper pole hematoma here. And there was debris in the bladder, this area. Now to see if it is structure fits to the this urinary bladder wall, or if it is mobile. So we turn the patient to the left side and it is moving. So these were blood clots after trauma to the kidney. He had hematuria because of this blood coming from the kidney and the bladder. And when we turned the patient, it was moving in the urinary bladder. This patient came in with hematuria, female patient. And we examined, and the IUCD was penetrating in the wall of the bladder. This the uterus here, it had penetrated into the wall of the bladder. Then tumors can bleed, and they can panic the patient. Here you can see the left ureter jet is coming here. Here you can see a mass, and you can see this jet is distorted. So it is invading in the periureteral area in the orifice of the urinary bladder. There's a involvement here. These can be multicentric. So if you see a mass in the bladder, always try to find other, because we have seen recently one of our professors in the University of Lahore, he died because he had many these tumors, and then there was metastasis in different organs. This patient came in with hematuria. He had a transurethral resection of prostate. Abdominal ultrasound was normal, but when I examined with the truss, I could see this vein. I saw with the Doppler this was a vein, because with the spectral Doppler you can tell it is artery or the vein. So this was the vein. So when he was straining, it was bleeding. So that could be the cause of his hematuria. This patient came with dysuria, severe pain, and a retention of urine. So we did the truss examination, and he has a prostatic abscess in this area. Right posterolateral wall. This patient came with mumps. As you know, with mumps, they can have ophritis and they can have epididymoarchitis. In this case, on color Doppler, this appears normal. This side, the testis is swollen, the skin is thickened, and the Doppler shows increased vascularity. So acute emergencies, anybody can come in with epididymoarchitis, especially the people with mumps. Female pelvic pain. They will present to you different patients. Recently, I saw a 10-year-old girl, mother was doctor. She came in and she was crying that my child has a cancer of the ovary. So I examined it. First of all, when you examine the patient with the pelvic pain, see with the grayscale. This is another patient, not that girl. We did the TVS and you can see this area here. There is some acoustic enhancement indicating cystic area, but still you cannot be 100% sure that if it is a cyst with hemorrhage, endometrioma, or it is a solid tumor. So that's where the color Doppler comes in. It is a very important modality where you can see the cystic area. You turn the color Doppler on, there is a thick debris inside, and this is the uterus, and there is some vascularity in this area. So color Doppler is very important to see the pelvic masses. As you can see here in this case, if we saw this one, we will say that, well, it could be a cyst with hemorrhage inside, or it could be a tumor. But once you turn the color Doppler on, then you can see that these solid areas show moderate vascularity. So this is a tumor in the wall of a cyst of the ovary. Then another emergency which you may face is the ectopic pregnancy. Ectopic pregnancies most common are in the ampulla, 70%. And 11% they are in the tubes. And interstitial is 3%. And in the cervix, there are 1%. So these pregnancies in the tube, they are most likely to rupture and cause bleeding, and the patient may die from this complication. Abdominal pregnancies which occur in the abdomen, they are not likely to rupture or cause. I have seen up to 35 weeks pregnancy in the abdomen. So they typically rupture between 6 and 16 weeks of gestation, these ectopic pregnancies, and they cause severe bleeding and death may occur. So you have to be very careful, and if you see a patient and there may be some free fluid in the pelvic area, immediately send her to the emergency room. And also, once you suspect this ectopic pregnancy, you should do abdominal ultrasound, then you do the transvaginal ultrasound, and try to see if there is any intrauterine pregnancy. If there is an intrauterine pregnancy, there is very rare chance of having an extrauterine pregnancy. But if the pain is there, try to look at that nexa, and if there is any adnexal pathology, or there may be pregnancy outside and inside both, heterotrophic pregnancy. So the tubal pregnancy is most likely to rupture because there's not enough space there. And that's how the pregnancy looks like. Uterus is empty. There's a blood leaking outside here. This is leaking outside here. You can see the gestation sac, and you can see the fetal pole inside. So these are the complications of ectopic, and it's very important you diagnose. You should be familiar with abdominal ultrasonography, and if there's a need for transvaginal. In this case, it was 6 weeks and 7 days. Thank you very much. I had some other slides of fast, but I think time is enough.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. It was a nice presentation.
Thank you.
Very good and attractive slides, and we always learn a lot from you. We have, let's see if we have any questions. I think everyone was so interested that they forget to write any question in question answer slate. There is nobody has asked question. So I will invite Dr. Ahmed Abdul Rahim to ask any question if he has got any question in his mind.
Thank you very much, Prof. Muhammad. Thank you very much, my boss, Prof. Jailani. Thank you for very nice presentation. And I think everything is clear, and the slides and picture are very clear.
Sir, I have got a question. So if you scan a patient with acute abdominal pain, patient is crying and is in the emergency, and when you scan, there is no finding. So what do you suggest to do? Is that patient is functional, or we have to rule out other things?
Okay, once you examine a patient with acute abdominal pain, we have to keep in mind the gastric pathology and pathology in the intestine, large and small, we may not be able to rule out unless there's a big mass or big pathology or edema of the wall, or like appendicitis. You can have a normal scan of the liver, gallbladder, pancreas, biliary, spleen, kidneys, urinary bladder. So if you don't see any pathology, that doesn't mean the patient is functional unless you rule out the other pathology.
Thank you, sir. We have got 3 questions. People have started writing questions. So the first question from Maida Tahir is that is there any difference between hemorrhagic cyst and endometriotic cyst on imaging?
In endometriotic and
hemorrhagic cyst,
usually the hallmark of endometrioma is there are some minor calcification in the wall of endometrioma. This is a hallmark, whereas the hemorrhagic cyst may not have that thing. The other is that we are clinical radiologists. We are not just basic scientists. So if it is cyclical pain occurs every month, then it points out to the endometrioma. And the other thing is the calcification. These are the 2 points.
Thank you, sir. Another question is from Anam Sarwar. She is saying that if a patient is suffering from severe left iliac pain and which resolves after 15 minutes and it comes twice or thrice a day, on ultrasound ureters, kidney are clear, no stone, no hydronephrosis, but pain becomes severe after micturition. 2 to 3 ml fluid on cul-de-sac on right side. What do you suggest for differential diagnosis? The patient is having...
If there is an elderly patient, I've seen in America, not very common in our country, is diverticulitis. They will have left iliac fossa pain because of the diverticula in the sigmoid colon and lower part of the descending colon. But if the pain is cyclical, UTI must be ruled out. Urine examination should be done. And if it is a female patient, the other thing we should rule out is the leaking ovarian cyst. I've seen many cases where either the cyst had ruptured and it was, patient went into shock and she said that something has burst. Otherwise, if you can see fluid, you should rule out leaking ovarian cyst.
Thank you, sir. Another question is there, sir. How to rule out mumps on ultrasound?
We cannot rule out mumps on ultrasound, but we can see swollen parotid glands. And if you can see the painful swollen parotid glands, this is a diagnostic of mumps. And complication of mumps is orchitis. If there's no parotid swelling, then the swelling in the testes may be due to orchitis or epididymoorchitis, but not related to mumps.
So it will be done with high frequency linear transducer.
Yes, definitely 7 to 11 megahertz.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Salwa Abdullah. The name shows it is Sudanese name. Thank you, sir. How we differentiate between sludge ball and stone on ultrasound?
First of all, it depends on the density of that particular structure which is there. And the stones have a very sharp acoustic shadowing, whereas sludge ball, it is composed of sludge, maybe some little particles of stone. It will not show clear-cut shadowing. And some sludge balls I have seen, they are stuck to the wall of the gallbladder, whereas the stones, they are usually mobile. Changing the position, they'll change.
Thank you, sir. The next question is that what is the composition of pancreatic stones? Is it different from gallstones and urinary bladder stones or renal stones, or it is of same types, the pancreatic stones?
I don't have any personal experience with analysis, but I think the gallstones, they composed of cholesterol and bile pigments, whereas there are no pigments or bile in the pancreas. So I think they are composed of pancreatic secretions and they have no relation with the gallstone or biliary stones.
Thank you, sir. Another question from Facebook is that if person is already having abdominal pain with abdominal tenderness, how we are supposed to perform ultrasound?
In my experience, which I have seen, the many of our students and new radiologists, they press too hard on the patient. And even normal patients, they complain that we are feeling pain after 2 days of having operation. So when I was in America and I started learning this ultrasound in 1976, there was a technician, Joanne. She said that when you are holding the probe, you hold it like this and put your finger like this here. And your finger should be touching the patient's skin so you know how hard you are pressing. Usually we do it like this and we are pressing like this, and there's too much pressure. We cannot feel that how much pressure we are exerting. So always hold the probe like this. So your little finger is touching the patient. So you have to be gentle, put the gel, maybe put enough gel that you don't touch the skin of the patient. I hope that
Another
answers.
question. Yeah, thank you, sir. How can we recognize pancreatic stone in duct when there is no shadow?
I don't have any experience with this one because there are not many stones there. But I think shadowing is must. And if you want to get a good shadowing, you have to get the stone in the center of the transducer, center of the
Yes.
beam. That's the important thing.
So Thank you, sir. The next is, can we diagnose pancreatic pathologies on ultrasound with accuracy? Asking about the accuracy of ultrasound for diagnosis of pancreatic pathologies.
So the modality of choice is CT scan. And don't put your foot in your mouth. That's the thing about pancreatic pathology and ultrasound. A few years ago, a patient came to me. I looked at the pancreas and I wrote that I cannot see the pancreas and advised CT scan. He went to the physician. He said that these radiologists, they are suggesting all these modalities which are expensive. So he went to Germany, he had CT scan and there was a carcinoma of the pancreas. So if you don't see anything, don't comment on it. And there's nothing wrong with admitting that I am not 100% sure.
Thank you, sir.
So modality of choice is...
Yes, Ahmed.
Prof. Muhammad, what is the photographic feature of intestinal obstruction? Can we rely on ultrasound to diagnose intestinal obstruction?
No, this is not the modality of choice for that one. Here you can rely more on the abdominal X-ray. You may guess, but it's not the diagnostic.
Someone from Facebook, Kamar Nawaz, is asking, what is orchitis?
Orchitis is basically inflammation of the testes. Orchids are the testes, and if there is inflammation of the testes, it is orchitis. If there is inflammation of the epididymis, then we call it epididymitis. And if both are involved, then epidydymorchitis. Most of the people I see in my practice and in my service, they are epidydymorchitis. And these are complications of these venereal diseases, gonococcal or something like that.
Sir, another question is that if I scan a male child with pain of right iliac fossa pain, the sonographic appearance shows that the appendix is normal, there is no lymphadenopathy, but there is fluid in the right iliac region. What can be the cause?
I've seen many patients like this, but my feeling is that what I write in the report that there may be some inflammatory process going on. I'm not sure what it is, because it cannot be normal. You have to rule out the ureter, but if there is a free fluid, even if appendix appears normal, you have to think of some inflammation.
Thank you, sir. The other question is, respected sir, as you explained about the ectopic pregnancy, the abdomen, as you said, I observed that 37 weeks pregnancy, if I'm not wrong, sir, I want to ask that for this much time, as the pregnancy is controlled by some specific hormones, he is asking about abdominal pregnancy at 37 weeks.
It was about 35 weeks and the fetus was alive. This is only once has happened in my 50 years career.
So another one came, sir, with 37 weeks.
Okay.
Maybe with the 2 years career. Thank you, sir. The next is how FNH and focal spread area differentiate. Focal nodular. Maybe FNH means the focal nodular hypertrophy or something else. I don't know.
Focal nodular hyperplasia occurs in this hepatitis, but this is another topic of our discussion today.
Yes, thank you. If a patient has ectopic pregnancy, that is pregnancy in abdomen, how the demands of fetus fulfill? How the fetus gets blood and nourishment, sir?
Actually, the fetus gets this blood from the placenta, and once the placenta implants on the fallopian tube, it gets blood from the maternal, there's exchange of the gases and all the nutrients. But once it grows, it will rupture. But if the pregnancy is at the femoral end or in the abdomen, then the chorionic villi will penetrate the intestine and they'll get the nutrition from there.
Mahanur Chaudhary on Facebook is asking that is ultrasound good to evaluate the inflammation, especially in abdomen?
As I've already said, that inflammations like in the mucous membranes of the stomach or gastritis or in the colon, ulcerative colitis, ultrasound is almost nil in importance. The other organs like kidneys, spleen, liver, gallbladder, pancreas, unibladder, and uterus, these inflammation can be diagnosed with ultrasound and the doctor.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
There are a lot of questions coming. A person gallbladder is pain but no stone there.
that
I
I've
think
already
you want to say
explained.
that there is a gallbladder stone but there is no pain.
If there is a stone in the gallbladder, then we call it calculus cholecystitis. And I showed you a slide where there was no stone, and you have to rule out small stones maybe in the cystic duct. But if there are no stones in that area also, then we call it acalculous cholecystitis. But thickening of the gallbladder wall alone does not indicate cholecystitis, because thickening of the wall can be in any disease causing fluid retention, like renal disease, hepatic disease, cardiac disease, anything, or ascites will cause thickening of the gallbladder wall.
Thank you, sir. There is a lot of repetition of similar questions. So with this, we will close our session. I would like to thank Professor Dr. Mohammad Nawaz Anjum for his nice presentation and giving very accurate and clear answers to the questions. And I am thankful for our guest, Dr. Ahmad Abdur Rahim from Al-Zaim Al-Azhari University. At the end, I would like to request Dr. Ahmad Abdur Rahim to say a few words about this webinar before we close.
Yes, thank you, Prof. Jailani, for this for facilitating this webinar, and also thank Prof. Muhammad for this very clear and very nice presentation and informative. And we hope to see him in other webinars to share his valuable knowledge. Thank you very much, Prof. Jailani. Thank you, Prof. Muhammad.
Thank you, sir. Thanks to the speaker, the guest, and to all the attendees at Facebook and at our webinar. Hope to see you again in our next webinars. Most of the Tuesdays evenings, we will have webinars on imaging and ultrasound, and we will try to have some workshops, hands-on also, online workshops in future. Hope to see you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
I
very much.
enjoyed this meeting, and I am willing to participate in more webinars in future.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.